In this stage we're going to look at the ceramic build-up technique onto the coping that's been produced.
So there are several different techniques that you can use for building up the ceramics. We're going to use the most basic technique, so we're going to use only 2 of the available ceramics. We're going to use the base dentine, which provides the bulk colour. We're not going to use the dentine, which has just been removed, and we're going to use the enamel dentine on the top. This is the modelling fluid that they're all mixed with. So we're going to take some of the base dentine. This will be labelled 3M2 or whichever shade you're going to use. It's coloured pink with some food dye, just so you can differentiate between the ceramics when they're in the palette at this stage. It's mixed with the modelling fluid, just a small amount. That's a little too much. And then when we're mixing ceramics in the palette, we use a special instrument, not any old Lecron, because we don't want to get metals in this material which would discolour it on firing. So we either use a glass rod or one of these special ceramic instruments. Because I've put a bit too much liquid in, I'm just going to blot some of the excess out. What we don't do is just keep adding more and more of the powders. They're ridiculously expensive, these materials, so we just blot out the excess, and we're trying to get the consistency sort of wet sand, really, just like you would when you're building your sandcastle. You don't want it too wet, otherwise it just slumps, too dry and it all just falls apart. It's the same principle with these materials. So a little bit more moisture taken out, and we should be just about there that we can pile the material up and it stays in shape. Okay, so to position these ceramics then we're going to use a sable brush. We use this in 2 modes. First of all, you saturate the brush with water, get all the air out, pull it back on a piece of tissue while twisting at the same time. You get a nice point like that, or as I refer to it in crystals, the beautiful fox's tail mode. Okay, so that's the first mode that you use for your brush. The second one, establish your fox's tail, in between the fingers, pull back, little flat, smoothy outy instrument you've got there now. We would call it otter's paw. So, with your pointy mode then, fox's tail mode, pick up some of the ceramic, the wet sand, place it on your substructure, and that can be used just to position the ceramics in the right place. So we're not using the brush as a reservoir to hold all the material like you would with paints. We're just using it to pick the ceramics up.
So you've got your tissue behind there, haven't you, to pull the water out of the ceramic once you've placed it onto the die, which helps it stick into place and it won't slump off. And it's quite important to keep the ceramic powder and liquid mixture condensed, and that can either be by vibration. You might see some people with a corrugated tool on their Lecrons rubbing the model, or you can just put tissue behind it. The more you condense the ceramic, the more you will stop the shrinkage upon firing, because you will have to overbuild this for shrinkage. It's quite important.
So another bit of ceramic going onto the labial surface, just positioning it around, smoothing it out, blotting the moisture out all the time. You can see just picking ceramic up again, positioning.
It's all fox's tail for this bit, isn't it?
All fox's tail action.
And then
there we go.
Otter's paw there.
Sneakily into otter's paw for smoothing out. Again, taking some tissue, getting the excess moisture out of the ceramic. That'll stabilise it on the substructure, so it's not going to start slumping as you turn the model. This is the most basic technique we're using, so we're just using the base dentine to build up to full contour, and then we're going to cut back and apply some enamel shade just at the incisal edge, and we'll try and create some mamelons in the labial surface as well, just to give a little bit of detail. When you look at the ceramics kit, you'll see that there's a whole range of different ceramics we can build in, varying in translucency and colour, so we can put different ceramics around the margin. We can use internal colours to create enamel cracks and so on. The dentine shade. This is the base dentine, the dentine shade to have a transition between the translucencies as well.
So this is the cutback stage, isn't it, that you just alluded to a minute ago? So you're now putting, you're taking away the material where you would like the enamel, the more translucent areas to be placed in the end. So by scratching a couple of grooves into the surface of the incisor, we will be able to put the effect of mamelons, the sort of dentine fronds through the tooth.
Yeah, so we're trying to leave the mamelons, create some translucency in between them. Just smooth it out.
Bit of fox's tail to smooth it out.
Define them a little. Straight into Otter's paw, smooth out any bits that have...
That's a bit of a hybrid there. It's more of a fox's paw, that one.
Steady.
There we go. As you can see, it's much larger than you would really want the final tooth. You've overbuilt it for the shrinkage then. There's a still of it.
So the enamel powders are mixed in exactly the same way. Keep them in a separate compartment in your palette. If the ceramics have dried out a little, you might want to add a small amount of moisture, and that allows the two ceramic powders, the two different ceramic powders, to blend. If it's too dry, it'll just ball up on the surface of the dentine and won't blend together nicely. So you can see now the contrast between the colours allows you to see where you've placed the enamel powders in comparison to the dentine. We're just speeding up a bit here.
Nothing new, is there? No new techniques. No. Same brush technique, same powder.
Just restoring the contour again now. Finishing off. Making sure that it's nicely dried out. All the ceramics are nicely condensed. Taking any powders which have gone to the adjacent teeth away. Blotting out, and that should be just about it.
And at this point is the worrying point, because we have to remove the dye from the model so that you can do the contact points, because where you've built it from the front and the back, you're going to get a void where the contact points were. So the next stage is to take the model out of the dye and have a look at what you need to patch up.
So you can see the void there on the distal aspect of the tooth. Just going to take a small, take the brush and with it slightly moist, just blend all the bits together before adding some more powders into those areas.
Again, this is a bit tedious, so we've sped it up. Smoothed off, condensed. Same for the other side.
Smoothing off, condensing, tidying up just around the margins, make sure it's not coming over the edge.
And then you've got to very gently grab it at the contact point and place it onto the platinum pin. There it is. Dropping it at this point is not a good idea, is it?
No. Okay, so you can see the two materials there quite nicely. Porcelain furnace again. This goes into a firing cycle, fires at about 920 degrees, comes out looking something like this. You can see all the particles have sintered together now. We've got a nice dense ceramic now.
But the surface is slightly orange peak, isn't it?
Yeah.
It always goes sort of slightly rough, so you need to grind that back.
Of course, because we've overbuilt the ceramics to start with, we're never going to get this right first time. So we're going to now trim any excess that we've got, put a nice surface finish on the restoration, look for any areas where we might want some additional ceramics putting on, and then we can do that and refire any additions on.
It is unusual to do it in one go, isn't it?
It is.
Even
very unusual.
sort of good technicians have a couple of firings.
So here I've ground all of the surface, and now I'm just checking the medial and distal and the incisal edge, which I'm sort of happy with there. When I look at the labial surface, it looks like it's just a little bit too bulky, and it just wants a bit off the mesial side of it, the distal side of it, just to angle that labial surface a bit. So I'm just going to take the diamond burr and shape that a little bit more, just to make the incisal edge go around the arch a little more rather than being like a piano key. A bit of moisture on the surface of the ceramic gives you what it's going to look like finally. I needed a little bit more on the palatal surface, so we can add on in some dentine shades here, and this can go into the furnace and have an additional firing.
The additional firing is at a slightly lower temperature, isn't it? So that
That's
the
right.
main crown won't slump when it's refired. Make
Okay.
sure it's nicely condensed. That would be refired
Okay.
until you've got a crown at the shape that you want.
Job done.
Excellent.